I attribute a lot of it to the rural community that I grew up in, and being connected and knowing people in the community. But it was really, at age 12, there are certain things you can do at that age. There's not a lot, but you can, sports and play dates and library trips in the summer. And something that was fun for me was to solve problems, and whether that was reading a book and figuring out how to solve problems, or doing something hands-on and solving problems. And one of those problem-solving methods became fixing and repairing computers for just about anyone and everyone in the community. And that went, and it kind of ran itself from going from just fixing computers to owning a technology and branding corporation.
So where are you now with all of this in terms of kind of a full-service company? I mean, how have things changed in recent years?
Yeah, so number one is that I'm not all hands-on in every single project, which is exciting and also a little bit confusing and challenging for me to kind of let go and to help delegate some things out. But one of the things that we have done in the past and we're continuing to do is really dig into every client relationship and really provide them with more and more and more. And before, when it was just me, it was always, how do we reach the most people so that we can provide the service? Now that we have this team that is looking at every aspect of our client's relationship, whether it's in the graphics or whether it's in the web or whether it's in video, one of the things that we're really doing that we weren't doing before, and as we're growing, we're continuing to do, is really looking at what are the high value relationships that we have with our clients. Another thing that we're doing is growing and looking at what are the things that we don't want to do. When I started, we did everything, and for the most part, we still do personal computer support, business support, network security support, really anything technology related. And then on the other side of the office, we have the branding, and we have digital and creative and social media. And when you put people of those two traits together, it's like putting together two completely different personalities. One's the right brain, one's the left brain. You have these people that are thinking analytically, these people that are trying to think creatively and with lots of pizzazz and colors. And so one of the things that we're really doing is digging into what is the value that we provide to our clients, what are we really, really good at, what are the things that we're really good at, and what are the things we're good at, and then chopping those things off kind of as we go along so that we can continue to provide the clients with the relationship that they're looking for.
Are there some lessons for doing digital in a rural community, a smaller community? You've mentioned talking to people all over the state of Nebraska. What are you learning about those specific needs that might be different?
Yeah, so the biggest thing and I tell this to people a lot, is the competitive market. So when you're in a big city, or in a city or a space that has more than one competitor overall, when you go in and you're trying to present your proposal, you're always going in with the idea that you have the best solution over the other person. In a rural community, you're trying to convince, and in a rural community where there is no competition in the digital branding space, it's not a free range in that you get every client and check and sign them up for their service. Because it's not, to what they see, it's not a necessity. So what you have to do is you have to not see the competition as another company, but it's yourself and them not having the service. So instead of saying, yeah, we've got this solution and we're better than this company, use BCom solutions, what we're saying is, you might not have ever had this solution before. Your business has been around for 20 years. And now I'm trying to convince you to buy something worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Here's why you need to do that. So sometimes that's harder, and most of the time that is harder than saying, oh, we're competing against XYZ company. We can provide you with this better solution. I almost prefer that because I like to interact with people other than fighting against myself and saying, oh, you've never had this before, but this is why you need it now.
Where do you think digital will be 5 years from now?
I think it'll be in all sorts of places for a few reasons. Number one, the digital world of North Carolina, Omaha, Lincoln is different than the digital world of Auburn, Nebraska. And I think one of the things that's important, I read an article recently about the future of the web design agency, and basically that it's not going to exist because websites are going to design themselves, which is really reassuring for the team members that I just hired that are in web design. But I think one of the things that has to happen is, in order for creative agencies, not just specifically web design, but creative agencies to continue to grow, is there has to be a constant source of learning. as soon as they shut off from that learning source, they just become that 20-year-old company that has never had this social media marketing plan or this website, and they don't think they need it, and they think that they're just going to continue to survive, or they'll retire and then they don't have to worry about it, and it's not their problem. In the large cities, I think a lot of it obviously will go to mobile. Statistics say that, and the more things that can be put in your hand versus on a larger screen, or you want access to information much faster and much quicker. The ability to have that in a rural community will be very dependent upon internet connection speeds. It'll be very dependent upon location to other communities that are influencers in that space. You know, if I'm a rural community in California, I'm probably going to have a more advanced knowledge of Facebook than if I'm a rural community in Nebraska. But what we've seen is that, you know, Facebook has now kind of groomed itself into an older population. My grandma has Facebook, so we know that it's made its headway there. But Twitter hasn't. And so it's moving and it's moving. And you see this constant cycle. And I think that, you know, in the next 5 years, there's going to have to be creativity on both ends. I think the rural communities will still continue to be a little bit behind, but I think with efforts like BCom Solutions doing, I think we'll be less behind, hopefully. But I think there's going to have to constantly be education and learning and moving forward, and embracing the fact that you might spend $5, $10, $15, $20,000 on a website this year, and in 2 years, it might be entirely different. You might be able to type 5 words, and then that website builds itself, which is both exciting, hoping that not everyone knows how to do that, and we can use that as a selling feature, and it's a little bit frightening as well.
It would seem that rural communities, there's a bit of a paradox, namely, on the one hand, you may not have all the resources of a city, but on the other hand, the technology has the potential, if everybody's connected to the internet and has those speeds, to level the playing field?
Right. I am of the belief 100% that in the next 5 years, the rural community and the city will be something that people just look at as, I'm in Auburn and I'm in Omaha. I'm hoping that the word rural goes away, not because I don't like it, but because it tends to have a negative, you know, I'm in a rural community. And I think with technology and BCom Solutions is a testament to that we're able to reach international markets from rural Nebraska. As far as leveling a playing field, I think that anything that can be done in a city can have some sort of impact in a rural community, and the same way, you know, and people often would see the technology as something in the city and the agriculture as something in the rural community. But now you see companies like ours existing in rural communities, and you see community gardens, you see people developing and putting crops in cities to experiment with organic growth and what does that look like. And you see all sorts of exciting things going on in the agriculture industry on rooftop gardens and all these different spaces. And so I think rather than level the playing field, I think there will hopefully be a larger sense of collaboration and people not seeing a business as, oh, that could only exist in this type of population, but oh, that's something that I can take and I can adapt in a rural community or I can adapt in an urban environment so that we both have those service offerings.
Whether it be technology in the tractor, drones, other aspects of the Internet of Things, that should be favorable, should in terms of your generation really looking at a community like Auburn differently?
Yeah, the access to information and the Internet of Things is really going to make the distance shorter. Amazon delivering my groceries to me via drone from Omaha in however many minutes is going to drastically change the way in which I perceive a drive to Omaha, because I can get in my car and I can drive an hour and I can be here, and I don't have to worry about my groceries making it because I've got my drone that's doing that for me. So maybe a trip to Omaha is not as much work and it's more exciting to do a little more socializing in the city or something. But I think the biggest thing in the Internet of Things will be educating, because I think the biggest problem in the past has always been that there's a larger market for educating the new technologies in big communities, and in places like Omaha and Lincoln, there are more people that are going to embrace that, and then in the rural communities there are more people that maybe don't care about that, or they don't have the time or energy or resources to do that. And so I think the more technology that's incorporated, the more we have online education, the more we have digital education, people will be able to come and learn at the same time.
What are you learning in North Carolina that you bring back every summer to Auburn that is beneficial?
Yeah, so I'm learning that it takes a lot of work to balance 500 different things. But I'm also learning that the problems that are happening in Auburn, Nebraska, and what people might see as just a Nebraska problem or a Midwest problem are also happening on the coast. You look at Eastern North Carolina, where it's a coastal community. You have a beach, but how many months out of the year do people go to the beach? Okay, well, in the months that they're not at the beach, are they an urban city or are they a rural community? What is their population? And you'd be amazed to see what some of the actual census populations are at these beach communities, just because who wants to be at a beach in December? And so I've seen, by being in North Carolina, that there are, these problems everywhere, and that what we can do is, instead of just building a model that's sufficient for just Nebraska or just for Auburn or just for southeast Nebraska, we can build something that is sufficient for eastern North Carolina and every rural community that they can adapt into something that will help them.
Is tourism and travel a piece of the puzzle here in Nebraska in terms of some of the communities? Could you do more with that as you've driven around the state and looked at it?
I think there are a lot of cool things in the community, in Nebraska at large. I think one of the big things is what are people's interests, and getting into the community that has those interests, because we're never going to be able to compete with the family of 5 that is set on going to an amusement park. We don't have that offering at the same level that Disney World can. But instead, what we can do is we can target those people that have passions about history, and we can provide them with better resources and better ways of finding, these are the top places that you need to go in Nebraska. These are all the uncovered things that you can find in Nebraska. And Nebraska has a very rich history, both in as far as the expansion west, as far as the railroad, and as far as the people that have been through the state and have lived in the state and live in this state now. And I think that finding those audiences and really marketing towards them and saying, yeah, if you're looking for those types of things, then we can provide that to you. Because what we don't want is to market and try and get a bunch of people here that we know aren't going to see the benefits. We want to find the people that are going to love the things that we do have to offer.
Is there one thing that you would tell my generation about your generation that we don't get well enough, that we should see going forward, that the direction of things?
Yeah, so I would say that it's maybe a gap on both ends. And that's the biggest thing, is that I see a huge disconnect, at least in rural communities in Nebraska, between the aspirations to do great things in young people, and young people want to do those great things, and the older populations also want young people to do great things, but they have a different way of communicating that. For the older people, it's fill my seat on this board, or take over this for me, or I want to give you this business. The young people are seeing things in Lincoln and Omaha like unlimited vacation at this new startup. They're seeing get free this and free that in this new space, and get 6 months off when you work for us for 10 years. And so when they see fill my seat on a board, that just immediately brings them down. But they both want the same things. They both want to move forward. They both want creative opportunities. And so maybe both ends can do a better job of sharing what the visions are, take less time to get caught up in the logistics like boards, meetings, chairs, and those things, and really identify that we both have a common goal of strengthening Southeast Nebraska, strengthening the rural communities.
One last question. You seem to be a big believer that technology is a big component going forward for everybody, and that's really part of the solution.
I do. I think that technology is the future, and as tacky and as cliche as that sounds, but it's the way in which it's used. And we've been able to use technology for rural communities, not in a way that we're going to create a monopoly and we're going to make every person in the rural community hate us for the service we're offering, but they have to have it. But in a way of, we want to educate people, and we want people to understand what we do, why we do it, and where it's going. And the idea that we are a company that is constantly evolving and changing our business plan and model with the end goal of providing people with resources in technology and branding solutions is sometimes confusing to people. But I'm of the belief, and I can see that rural communities can benefit from this, because being connected in a rural community on a digital level connects you not only to your community and maybe your region, but also to the world.
Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you think is important relative to your situation that I think is an interesting model? You're a student and a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Can any student do this? Should they all be thinking this way?
Oh, definitely. I think it's about passion, and it's about drive, and some students like to be involved in clubs and organizations, and I'm a part of some of those as well. But I really like to see where I can make a difference, and that's how we started, is solving problems. And I've been able, what I do is where can I solve the largest problems? And so masking that with being a student, I think it's a great opportunity. There are several resources and countless resources at universities and educational institutions that you wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. And so I'm all about also leveraging resources. So I think the student entrepreneurship combination is one of the best and most challenging fusions that you can come across as a young adult.